Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are really well and having a great start to your week. Today we're going to be trying out the newish Laura Mercier Flawless Lumiere Radiance Perfecting Foundation. First time. I have mine in the shade Macademia, and as you can probably already tell, although I've done my best to work with it, it is definitely too light for me. So if you are my foundation twin, I would recommend going at least one, if not two shades up from here. I think if I could do life again, I would go for the shade Dusk, because the actual warm shade up from this one, which I think is Butterscotch, looks too warm for me, and still maybe a little off, but Dusk looks like it would have been a better choice. What are you going to do? So this foundation has been around for a couple of months, I think, in the US, and has just arrived here in the UK. I got mine from Feel Unique, but it is now like widely available on like John Lewis and other places like that. We can finally get our mitts on it. I have been desperate to get my hands on this foundation from the moment I first read about it, and I will tell you why. This is the blurb from Laura Mercier. It says, Flawless Lumiere Radiance Perfecting Foundation delivers a perfectly glowing finish that looks luminous in any light, immediate glow and improved natural luminosity within a week, as it contains vitamin C. Skin appears more even and the appearance of dark spots are reduced after 4 weeks of use. Powerful 15-hour hydration, weightless medium to full coverage, resists oxidation. Interesting. Long wearing, comfortable second skin, naturally luminous finish, ideal for all skin types, especially normal to dry, as you would expect with a more luminous finish. Fragrance free, and they say it applies best with a sponge. Now, it is a very expensive foundation. It's one of the most expensive foundations I have. I think the only one that's more is the Armani Luminous Silk, so I have very high hopes for this one. The description sounds right up my street. Oh, and I'm also going to be retrying the Fenty concealer. If you watched my review on the new Fenty product, I didn't get on incredibly well, to be honest. The concealer actually was okay, it was fine, but the powder I didn't like at all, especially not the shade. So it kind of like created an issue with what I could really see or think about the concealer, because once you apply the powder over the top, I didn't like it. So I'm going to be retrying this today with my regular powder and giving it a bit more of a fair chance with a powder that I know to be good and I know how it usually looks. So if there's anything funky happens today, we'll know this is definitely a no from me. So I thought we'd give that another try while we're here. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to start off priming my skin using my Guerlain L'or primer. It's a good one for testing out foundations because it's a nice primer, sets the skin up nicely for foundation, but it's not going to make the foundation more dewy or more matte. It's not going to do a huge amount of smoothing. It's not going to make the foundation do something that, you know, it wouldn't usually do with another different primer if you don't have that one. So here is the foundation. I love the packaging. It's absolutely beautiful. Glass bottle, very thin, which is nice, I guess, for travel and things like that and packing it. But it does have a full fluid ounce, 30 mils inside. And it comes with a lovely pump. So as I said, this isn't my first time using this foundation, and I massively recommend using a sponge or a beauty blender over a brush. I find that the foundation just looks, I think it's generally these sort of thicker, dewier, more full coverage type of foundations generally apply much better with a sponge. I know that was the case for the GU foundation that I like, and just that type of thicker, glowy foundation. I think they just, because they're so creamy, I think that they apply better by sort of pressing them into the skin rather than smearing it around. I think you end up with lots of brush strokes and it's harder to build coverage that way. But for the purpose of the review and the fact that some people prefer a brush, I'm going to do half and half just to show you what I'm talking about. So you do get very little pumps with this foundation. The pumps are very small, like this is like 5 or 6 pumps. You can see it's very thick, it's hardly moving there. It does have a smell to it. It's a nice skincare type fresh sort of smell. It's not really strong, it's not offensive, it's, you know, quite nice type of smell. So we're nice and zoomed in and lights turned down nice and low, and I'm going to go in on this side first with my Sigma F80 as usual. And I'm just going to show you why I don't necessarily prefer a brush. So you will notice that this foundation is much too light for me. I had to properly blind order this off of Feel Unique. Never tried a Laura Mercier foundation, so I had no idea where to start with shade, and I did find the swatches are very misleading. I found the descriptions a bit like unexpected. I didn't think the descriptions or the swatches or even the pictures of the person wearing the foundation particularly helpful, and now you can see how light of a shade I've ended up with for that reason. So this is a light pass of the foundation, so it's definitely, you can absolutely get a really sort of light natural coverage with this foundation. You can still see, you know, definitely skin, some redness poking through, and all of that stuff. So if that's what you're looking for, you want a really light natural looking foundation, you can definitely do that with a brush very nice and easily. It does blend out nicely, and there's not a huge amount of brush strokes or anything like that, but I find it hard to build the coverage with a brush. You can see I've used almost all of those pumps. Like, you have to use a lot of pumps with this foundation, but it's not really a lot of foundation because the pumps are so small, like they're like drops rather than big pumps. So I don't think you're using really a lot of foundation. It's just, you gotta, you know, exercise your finger. So I think you'll probably see straight away with the sponge that you actually get more coverage, which is unusual. Usually it's the other way around. But for me, it's just quicker and you get more coverage with the sponge. That's just the way some foundations seem to work. It's funny when you're trying to talk while you're applying foundation with a beauty blender, because you're just like, you know? It's a really nice sort of, I don't know, it's almost like a citrus type smell. It's really fresh, lovely. Feels immediately on the skin, I feel like it's really hydrating. It feels fresh and cool and hydrating. But I have seen a few reviews of this foundation on people with dry skin and they have not liked it, which is interesting to me, because generally this type of foundation, people with drier skin you think would be drawn to it rather than people with oily skin, because it's, you know, nice and luminous. But yeah, if you have dry skin, I would recommend getting a sample first, because it seems people with dry skin don't enjoy it as much. So just to show you, I'm sure you can see just as well as I can, it looks like it in the monitor, that this side has nowhere near as much coverage as the sponge side. So that's why I prefer using the sponge. But both sides look good, and if you want a lighter coverage, then go for a brush, you know, personal preference. So now I'm just going to build up a little bit, make sure I even everything out on this side. I think it builds really nicely on itself. You don't end up sort of picking it back up as you're trying to add product, which I find dewier foundations, that can happen. Like, I think that sort of happens a little bit with the Too Faced Too You, like as you're trying to build on top of it, you're almost lifting it up as you're going, if you see what I mean. Okay, so we're done. I'm happy with this coverage. I'd say we're at a sort of medium to full. I don't think we're at full, but I do find that foundations that are this glowy tend to give you kind of more coverage in a kind of faking it kind of way, because they almost reflect, you know, a wave, so you don't see the redness or discoloration as much because the glow is kind of hiding it, as opposed to like the amount of coverage. But it's a definite solid medium to full, and obviously you could keep going and build it up as much as you want. It builds very nicely, but I just find it looks so gorgeous and luminous, but smooth and skin-like. So if you saw my Laura Geller Filter First foundation review, I loved that one everywhere apart from my chin, because it really did not look very nice on like my textured chinny section of the face. But this one, I feel like it just looks smooth and plump and youthful and healthy everywhere. My forehead looks really, really good. The main part of my face looks really good. Around my chin, it looks good. It looks good around my nose area. It's a tiny little bit creeping into my smile lines. Generally, dewier foundations look worse in my smile lines. This is kind of, it looks average in my smile lines, I find. So you will want to try and set them, but yeah, it's not going to completely stay out of your smile lines. it will slightly seep in there. Looks good between my brows. Very, very happy with everything other than the shade, which you can see against my body. That's light. So yeah, if by the end of this review I'm still obsessed with it, I am definitely going to be needing a darker shade. So let's get back to the Fenty concealer. This is the shade 190. If you didn't see my original review, I kind of liked it. I felt like it wasn't as much coverage as my Huda concealer, so for that reason I didn't prefer it, but it blends nicely. A little goes a long way. I like the shade of the concealer, but yeah, I did not like the powder that I used to set it, the Fenty powder. So I wanted to give this another go with my Huda powder, just to see if I liked it better without the powder that I feel like the powder aged me. It was quite drying on my under eye area. I didn't love it. So I'm gonna give this another go to see if with the powder I know and love, I like it better. I really like the finish of the concealer. It's a bit more, I'd say it's kind of satin, if not like a natural finish, although it's cool. I think they call it a soft matte, the same as their foundation. But yeah, to me it looks a bit more almost satin. Can you see how quickly everything is blending out? Really, really nicely. You can still see a little bit of my darkness. It's not full coverage. Okay, so now I'm going to set that with my tried and true Huda powder and see what we think. And this is the only place that I'm going to set my face. I'm not going to set the foundation at all because I want to see how it wears by itself and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think it looks better than it did with the Fenty powder, but it's still looking a little drier under there than when I use like my Charlotte Tilbury concealer, my Huda concealer, or like my MAC Studio Fix concealer. But it's not creasing, it's sitting nicely. My lines look okay. You can still see some darkness here. So yeah, I think really with the concealer, we'll see how it wears throughout the day. But I think for me, it's just okay. I think if you are younger than me, if you're, you know, in your early 20s and you don't have much discoloration and you want a more natural concealer, you'll probably much prefer it to how I feel about it. So the time right now is just gone 9:15 in the morning. So we are just going to finish the rest of my makeup and then we'll come back for a little check-in on how everything looks and a flash test before I go about my day. Okay, so we are back and I've basically done a full face of Charlotte Tilbury, to be honest. I've used my Filmstar Bronze and Glow for bronzer, I used her Bar of Gold palette for highlight, and I used one of her blushes in the Climax. And then I've just finished my eyes and I used my MAC lipstick in the shade Sweet No Sugar, one of their Powder Kiss lipsticks. So that's what we've got going on. I have not set with powder and I did not use a setting spray or anything that might unfairly help the foundation to wear better. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, beautiful, so smooth. I love the coverage. The shade is clearly not right, even though I've bronzed myself, I still have a ghost's face. But, you know, we can sort that out. That's not Laura Mercier's fault, is it? So yeah, I'll turn the lights down a little bit so you can see. It still looks, obviously this is highlight, but it still looks luminous and healthy and skin-like and smooth. It looks really good on my forehead. Nothing moved or did anything funky when I was putting the base products, like the rest of my face products, over the top, bronzer, highlight, blush, and I didn't set it. And generally with, you know, dewier, luminous foundations, you have to be a bit gentle and steady going over the top because they don't fully set down like a matte foundation would. But this feels pretty set, to be honest. It's not transfer proof, but it's not really, it doesn't feel wet. It's the tiniest little bit of tack left to it. But obviously you could set it down with powder if you wanted to get rid of that. It's got a slight amount of transfer onto my hands when I press my face. but it isn't like lifting up. So I think if you just set it with a small amount of powder, then it probably wouldn't really transfer on you much at all. And it would get rid of that slight little bit of tack, but it isn't wet still, it isn't sticky still, it isn't moving, it is as good as a very luminous foundation can get, I think, to be honest. I'm gonna show you this area because this is the area I really struggled with the Laura Geller Filter First foundation, which I loved everywhere else, but here really did me no favors. But this looks really nice. It has slightly, very slightly gone into my smile lines, very slightly for a luminous foundation. Forehead looks good. Everything else looks lovely. The flash test looks pretty good. One of the photos looked a little bit flashback Mary, but it has no SPF in it, and I think that's just because the shade is so much lighter than it should be. So I wouldn't worry at all to wear this if I was going to be under flash photography. I think it's going to be good. So we're saying the beginning of this wear test is starting at about 9:15 when I finished putting the foundation on. It is now 10 o'clock, so we'll be back, hang on, sometime after 5 o'clock. I make that to give this a good 8 hours and see how it's held up. I've got a busy day today. I've got to go into town, do some shopping, pick my kids up, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll hopefully give it a good test. See you in a few. Hi guys, we are back and it is just coming up to 5:30. So the foundation has now been on for just over 8 hours and I'm obsessed. I think it looks perfect, like flawless, really, really, really smooth. I've been into town, I've been running around shops, I've been trying clothes on and off, just, you know, shopping. I had lunch, I had a very messy, leafy salad. So I'll show you, there's a little bit of like caking just under my lip, and that's the reason why, but honestly, I'm surprised given what I've chowed down on today, that it wasn't a lot worse. My smile lines haven't got any worse, and there's really no sign of wearing anywhere else. Let me zoom on in and turn these lighties down so you can see what I'm talking about. So you can see, obviously we've got highlight up here, but you can see on the rest of my face, it's not wet or shiny, it's just like naturally luminous. I just think it looks so good, so smooth, the perfect amount of coverage, it's worn very well. I'm like really close up, just trying to see if there's anything else I can see, and there's really nothing. There's maybe the tiniest bit of wear just on my nose here, probably from where I've blown it or scratched it. And just here, it's maybe possibly bunched up a little bit just from where I was eating and getting sauce all over my face. But I don't think we can really hold the foundation responsible for that. So pretty darned good. So yeah, I'm really impressed. I love the finish of it. I actually popped into my Space NK. They didn't have this foundation, but they did have their original foundation, like the matte version of this one. So I swatched some of the shades. So this is the shade Golden, and this is the shade that I will purchase instead of this one Macadamia. As you can see up against my body, my face is considerably lighter. This is the shade, having swatched like every shade there is in their Flawless Fusion, I think the one that I swatched, but the shades are pretty much the same. So yeah, this is the shade Golden, this is the shade Honey, and as you can see, this is I think a neutral shade, but it is definitely too on the pink side for me. And then this is another neutral shade, but a warmer one, and this is the shade Buff. So yeah, this is definitely like the shade I would get, or I would recommend if you're around my skin tone. But yeah, I don't have anything bad to say. I really love it. You know, you sort of, well, I don't know if you do know, but when I do like foundation reviews, or if I just wear a new foundation, I look in like, you know, all the different mirrors, just try and notice it throughout the day. And today, you know, the mirror of truth in your car, the, what's it called? The mirror, you know, the rear view mirror, get it together. The rearview mirror, as I like to call it, the mirror of truth, when you think you're looking amazing and then you look in that mirror and you're like, ooh, probably go back inside. I like got in my car today and I looked in that mirror and I was like, ooh, okay, it's okay to leave the house today. I was so impressed. And then I got in the lift in town and it looked immaculate in the lift. It looked immaculate while I was in Boots, looking in, you know, the horrible lighting. It just looks gorgeous whatever mirror you use. I just think it's so smooth and perfect and lovely. I've looked on the Sephora website. The reviews are almost entirely amazing across all skin types. Lots of mature women saying it looks amazing and smoothing on them. 55+ women saying that it's really, you know, smoothed and making their lines and wrinkles much more reduced. So I think, to be honest, it's potentially going to work for anybody, but there are a few people who really haven't got on with it at all. So just bearing that in mind and maybe getting a sample, because it does seem to have just really not worked for some people, but it doesn't seem to be like a specific category. There are dry skin people who adore it. There's been oily skin people, mature people, combination, normal, all different shades and age ranges who have been obsessed with this foundation, looking at the reviews. So I think it's a bit of an anomaly maybe with what's going on with the people who really haven't got on with it. It's just one of those things, sadly. But yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about it. If you like a luminous foundation, but you don't want it to be dewy, you don't want it to move everywhere, you don't want it coming off on everything, you still want it to be long wearing, and you don't want it to age you, this is definitely one of my new favorites. I might even prefer this to my Dior Backstage, but I need more time before I can guarantee that. I need more time. So that's it from me. I hope you found this review helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing before you go so I can see you again next time. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye.